Αγαπητοί συνάδελφοι, φίλοι και φίλες, καλώς ήρθατε, καλή εβδομάδα. Χαίρομαι που σας βλέπω και σε αυτή την συνάντηση της Δευτέρας που μας έχει γίνει συνήθεια. Και πριν ξεκινήσουμε θέλω να ρωτήσω κάτι. Όταν θα σταματήσουν οι διαλέξεις της Δευτέρας, θα σας λείπει αυτή η συνήθεια του δευτεριάτικου απόγευμα μαζί όλοι σχετικά με τη διαμεσολάβηση? Το ότι δεν ακούω καμία απάντηση σημαίνει ότι θα σας λείψει ή δεν θα σας λείψει?
Είμαστε απλώς ευγενείς, κύριε Κουτσάκη, και δεν επιβαίνουμε ηχητά. Οπωσδήποτε θα μας λείψει. Ιδίως εμάς που είμαστε και πιο μακρινοί από την πρωτεύουσα. Ο Θεοδωρίδης, ο Κώστας είμαι από την Καβάλα.
Ναι, σας κατάλαβα, κύριε Θεοδωρίδη, σας είδα και όλα καλά είστε. Λοιπόν, εμάς περσούς
και βέβαια θα μας λείψει. Καλησπέρα σε όλους και πάλι.
Καλησπέρα, Βίκη.
Εγώ σας παρακολουθώ ανελιπώς από το Σεπτέμβριο. Οι Δευτέρες μου είναι κλεισμένες για εσάς και πραγματικά μετά από τόσες παρακολουθήσεις νομίζω ότι βγαίνω λίγο πλουσιότερη σε γνώσεις στη διαμεσολάβηση και θα μου λείψει σίγουρα.
Μας δίνετε μεγάλη χαρά λέγοντας αυτό που λέτε, Βίκη μου. Το ότι παρακολουθείτε τις διαλέξεις ανελιπώς το ξέρω, το εκτιμώ ιδιαίτερα. Εμείς τις διαλέξεις τις κάνουμε για σας. Εάν τις παρακολουθείτε λοιπόν σημαίνει ότι κάτι σας δίνουνε και άρα είναι κάτι το θετικό. Να δούμε μέχρι πότε θα συνεχίσω με αυτές τις διαλέξεις. Τώρα για το Πάσχα θα κάνουμε αυτή την εβδομάδα, τη σημερινή μας διάλεξη. Θα κάνουμε άλλη μία την επόμενη Δευτέρα και μετά θα πάρουμε ρεπό για 2 Δευτέρες και θα επανέλθουμε στη συνέχεια. Να είστε καλά πρώτα απ' όλα, να προσέχετε πάρα πολύ σας παρακαλώ όλοι. Μην παίρνω με θάρρος που άνοιξαν και έχουμε βγει όλοι στους δρόμους και έχει γίνει η Αθήνα και γενικότερα η ευρύτερη περιοχή σαν να μην συμβαίνει τίποτε ενώ τα κρούσματα καλπάζουν. Διάβασα ένα ανέκδοτο και μου άρεσε. Κάποιος έγραψε, εάν ήξερα ότι θα μας ανοίγανε στις 3.000 κρούσματα, θα προσπαθούσα να τα φτάσουμε νωρίτερα. Λοιπόν, αυτό όμως είναι μια πικρή αλήθεια. Σας καλωσορίζω σήμερα στην διάλεξη που θα μας κάνει η κυρία Bucklow, η οποία είναι η εκπαιδεύτριά μου και η εκπαιδεύτρια του Σέριου στη συνέχεια. Η κυρία Bucklow μαζί με τον κύριο Smith που ακούσατε πριν από μερικές εβδομάδες είναι οι πρώτοι εκπαιδευτές Άγγλοι οι οποίοι εκπαίδευσαν τους πρώτους Έλληνες διαμεσολαβητές. Εμείς πρώτα πιστοποιηθήκαμε από το Chartered Institute of Arbitrators στο Λόνδον και μετά υποβάλαμε τους φακέλους μας στο Υπουργείο Δικαιοσύνης και διαπιστευτήκαμε και από το Υπουργείο. Λοιπόν, πριν σας παρουσιάσω την κυρία Bucklow, θα ήθελα να ευχαριστήσω τον Πρόεδρο της Επιτροπής Νομικών Θεμάτων της Κεντρικής Επιτροπής Διαμεσολάβησης του Υπουργείου Δικαιοσύνης, τον κύριο Κυριάκο Οικονόμου, αρεοπαγίτη επιτιμή, ο οποίος μας δίνει πάρα πολύ χαρά τις Δευτέρες και μας κάνει την τιμή με την παρουσία του, με την ενεργό συμμετοχή του, με τις γνώσεις που συναποκομίζομαι από τις παρεμβάσεις του και τον ευχαριστώ θερμά και προσωπικά και εκ μέρους όλων σας, εάν μου επιτρέπετε, για την υπομονή του να μας ακούει και να απαντάει σε όποιες ερωτήσεις μας, είτε εδώ στις διαλέξεις, είτε αυτές που υποβάλλονται στην Επιτροπή. Κύριε Πρόεδρε, καλώς ήρθατε και σήμερα και ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ για την παρουσία σας.
Καλησπέρα σε εγώ, σε ευχαριστώ για τις φιλοφρονήσεις. Είναι χαρά μου, γυράσκω, όπως μπορείτε να δείτε, αεί διδασκόμενος.
Κύριε Πρόεδρε, 2 πράγματα να πω. Πρώτον, δεν γυράσκεται. Αν είναι αεί διδασκόμενος, αυτό είναι πάρα πολύ θετικό. Αλλά δεν γυράσκεται. Όσο και να το λέτε, δεν είναι αλήθεια. 1. Δεύτερον, αυτό που χαρακτηρίσατε ως φιλοφρονήσεις εκ μέρους μου, δεν ανταποκρίνεται στην πραγματικότητα. Από την Επιτροπή με έχετε ήδη γνωρίσει αρκετά καλά για να ξέρετε ότι φιλοφρονήσεις δεν κάνω. Λοιπόν, ό,τι λέω το αισθάνομαι και το πιστεύω. Καλώς ήρθατε και πάλι. Amanda, hello. Welcome to this lecture, to this event, which we will present through Zoom. It is a solution in the pandemic to have the possibility to see each other, even through technology. It is positive, to my opinion. Amanda, we are friends, and I remember you since I started dealing with mediation, because you are my trainer, together with Charles. You are the trainer of Sergio and many others. If I remember correctly, you have trained 90 mediators in Greece at that time, at the first period of your training in Greece. After that, under Facilitate, you have trained more in Prometheus. So welcome and thank you very much for having accepted my invitation to be here today with us. And be sure that we will take advantage of your knowledge and all the wonderful things you will present us. I know what you will present because you have told me. You will allow me now to present you in Greek to the participants. Η κυρία Amanda Bucklow είναι δικηγόρος στην Αγγλία και από τους πρώτους διαμεσολαβητές πλήρους απασχόλησης. Είναι διεθνούς φήμης, χέρι μεγάλης εκτίμησης στην Αγγλία. Κατατάχθηκε μεταξύ, θυμάστε που μας είπε ο κύριος Charles Middleton Smith για ένα είδος σαν who is who που λέγεται 500 legal στην Αγγλία. Η κυρία Bucklow είναι και εκείνη μέσα σε αυτό το who is who, σε αυτό το κατάλογο, το ευρετήριο, ας το πούμε έτσι, λόγω της αναγνώρισης των ικανοτήτων της. Ξεκίνησε να είναι πλήρους απασχόλησης διαμεσολαβήτρια το 1996 και ανέπτυξε πάρα πολύ την διδασκαλία στη διαμεσολάβηση, καταρτίζοντας πρόγραμμα πολύ αποτελεσματικό. Αυτό το λέω από προσωπική εμπειρία, διότι όπως σας είπα είχα την χαρά, την τύχη, όπως θέλετε πείτε το, να εκπαιδευτώ από αυτούς τους δύο πολύ έμπειρους διαμεσολαβητές. Και να σας πω ότι η κυρία Bucklow έχει εκπαιδεύσει πάνω από 1.200 διαμεσολαβητές διεθνώς, όχι μόνο στην Ελλάδα, σε πάρα πολλές χώρες του κόσμου. Τώρα, με την πανδημία και την αλλαγή των συνθήκων και όλη αυτή την κατάσταση, χρειάστηκε να ξανασχεδιάσει, αν μπορώ να πω, το πρόγραμμα διδασκαλίας της, προκειμένου να το παρέχει διαδικτυακά. Πράγμα το οποίο πέτυχε, παρότι δεν είναι αυτό που την ενθουσιάζει, κανέναν μας δεν ενθουσιάζει η διαδικτυακή επαφή, αλλά είπαμε από το τίποτε και ολότελα, και κατάφερε λοιπόν να εκπαιδεύει διαδικτυακά με μεγάλη επιτυχία. Να σας πω, το οποίο δεν το έγραψε η κυρία Bucklow στο βιογραφικό της, αλλά εγώ το ξέρω, ότι το χόμπι της είναι να ζωγραφίζει και εκείνο το οποίο την ξεκουράζει και της επιτρέπει να κάνει διαλύματα από τη σκληρή δουλειά και το έντονο πρόγραμμα που έχει, είναι η ζωγραφική. Amanda, I took the liberty to say that you are relaxing when painting.
Yes.
You have not written this in your bio, but I know it and I said it because it's true. So, Amanda, welcome again. Thank you again, and you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much. I have a little idea of how Catherine has introduced me, and if she's included the fact that I spend my time relaxing painting, you might add that I have recently started writing poetry to keep sane.
Oh, wonderful.
I'm really pleased to see a number of very familiar names and faces. It's really delightful. Thank you for the invitation. It's always a joy to share my knowledge. I think Catherine mentioned that together Charles and I trained probably nearly 600 mediators in Greece during the time that we were working there. So we feel that we had a pretty large contribution to the way in which mediators operate. And so for that reason, today, when I was thinking about what could I talk about, I thought about, or I tried to put myself in your shoes at the stage you are in mediation with the developments that have happened in Greece. And I thought, what would be most useful for you? So I have a few propositions or hypotheses, and I would like you, at the end of the short presentation, I'd like this to be more interactive, and it'd be very nice to have some questions from you so that I can respond to where you are now, as opposed to where I think you might be now. And I can see Bernadette smiling because she probably recognizes that I have not changed so much since 2008. And I have actually, I've changed. For example, I would have said that it was very difficult to mediate on Zoom, that there would be something missing from that personal interaction. And it's true, there is something missing, but there are some advantages as well. And certainly in my practice over the last year, but before that, because mediating on Zoom was not a new thing for me, I've learned quite a few things about how important some of the skills that I taught those of you way back when, how very important and very much more important they are right now. So I'm just going to, I have got a few slides because I know how much you love PowerPoint. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. So some of you will remember that I talked about mediation as a decision-making process, and that litigation is a decision-imposing procedure. And what does that mean in terms of how we operate and how we engage people with the experience of mediation? And so in order to explain more deeply why I think this is a very important distinction in terms of getting people to the table, I'd like to compare it with why it's a process and not a procedure. Making bread is a process. It's actually, you can take any number of ingredients, and the ingredients define the type of bread. You look at wheat, there are 14 species and over 30,000 varieties, and that's before you add in any of the other grains. So why is this important in terms of process? Because the process of mediation can be flexed and designed around the people and the problem. And any sort of obsession with it only being an alternative to the court procedure is losing nearly all of its value to society, and particularly right now. So for me, mediation is not just about a procedure, because when you have a procedure, a court procedure, for example, if you make a mistake, technically a mistake, then you've lost your case. Right? In mediation, there are no technicalities, or there shouldn't be any technicalities once you're in the room. And you can move that process so that you are engaging people in the right way. And the making of the bread, the chef, if you like, is the mediator. So then you've got all these different outcomes. And I think that where my practice has been embedded always since I first started after my training is to put this process in business, to make it actually part of a core business process, but also to make it earlier in the process or in the sort of engagement or the problem. That's been more difficult. People seem to need to feel a certain amount of pain in order to be able to consider something. But the outcomes are always a loaf of bread. But which loaf of bread? And is it the one that the customer wants? More importantly, and this is a more recent kind of insight, is that mediation is actually a behavior. It is doing and not saying or theory. It's actually a behavior. And as mediators, our behavior is absolutely crucial to how successful that process is going to be. And to that end, I'm just going to cover a few areas of what actually do we mean by behavior. Well, behavior is the outward expression of our values, beliefs, and assumptions. So when we're with parties, their behavior, past, present, and future, is also the expression of the values, beliefs, and assumptions. And in practicing as a mediator, you have to be very, very clear about what your values, beliefs, and assumptions are, because they will leak. So if you don't have a clear idea of what your values are in terms of how you are practicing, you'll come unstuck. And you might do something that will be harmful in terms of getting a resolution or even a clarification of what the problems are. So here's a not completely exhaustive list, but it's a pretty extensive list. Values, independence, no judging. That's a tricky one because, you know, we're always making judgments. My argument is that the mediator is making a judgment about what they do next and how they present themselves. No assumptions. Don't ever think you know what the case is about. Don't ever think you know what motivated those people, because you'll come unstuck and you will waste your brain energy on trying to sort of second guess what's going on. Always respect the freedom to choose. And one of the great insights of my life is that what anybody thinks, what anybody says, what anybody writes, and what anybody does is a choice that they make. So nobody does it. They can sometimes feel that they were under pressure or there were circumstances that made them choose that. But in the end, they do have a choice. And understanding why people have made certain choices is usually very helpful to moving into reality testing, or where do they want to get to. So commitment is a value which I hold particularly dear, being committed to the people in the room and demonstrating my commitment, and always judging whereabouts I let go. When do I let go of this? That it's not going anywhere. It's a constant question. Trustworthiness. Well, we know how important that is, and it's something you have to pay attention to. And you can demonstrate that. That's your behavior. Are you trustworthy? Open-mindedness, consistency. One of mine is do no harm. You know, I look at people and I think if I start imposing my ideas and my take on this particular case, then I might actually encourage them to make a decision that is really not good for them. Cooperative, consultative, everything through consultation, generous with time, generous with listening, generous spirited. being responsible and accountable, that's both me and the parties. Respect in all circumstances, even under intense provocation. Absolutely, that's really important. I mean what I say, and I do what I say. That consistency is extremely important. We can demonstrate these things in very small ways. They don't have to be big demonstrations and openness. Learning from mistakes, and a couple of times, 3 times, 4 times, I can't remember how many times, there have been times when I have made a mistake and I have, you know, apologized to people in mediation, and you can feel the sort of shift because you, as a mediator, said, I didn't do that too well, and I want to take a run at it again. So learning from mistakes, persistence and patience in equal measure. Persistence shouldn't become bullying, pressure, and patience shouldn't become surrender, you know, to what's going on. So a number of these are, and I'm sure you could add to this list, and I really encourage you to sit down and spend a few minutes. What are your values? Because your behavior will express those values and people will pick up on them. So my favorites are independence, no judging, no assumptions, respecting people's freedom to choose, trustworthiness, respect in all circumstances, persistence and patience. And I think those are the things that I carry with me, or the benchmarks or the anchor points that I carry with me into every mediation as my compass for navigating my way through whatever's going to happen. So if you don't know your values, then you won't know why some things work and others don't. And if you don't know what your biases are, then you'll be less effective in helping people decide what they need. I'm sorry for the typo. So if mediation is a behavior, it's also an experience. And I think this is one of the biggest points that every country has missed in terms of marketing and engaging people. It is an experience. Nobody has any idea of what mediation is like. Not a mediator, trained or otherwise, not a party, until they've actually been in the mediation and experienced it. And what people experience are a safe pair of hands, calm and respectful, taking care of comfort and putting people at ease, because they can't think. If they're stressed and full of anxiety, anxious, etc., then this is not working. It's frozen or passive or waiting for something to happen. The experience is anticipating how people might feel. And for the first time, maybe in a long time, those parties have the experience of somebody else thinking about them and how they might be feeling and what might be going on and how difficult this might be. Acknowledging that it has been difficult, appreciation of the difficulties about the decision-making process, and helping people to really go through critical thinking, helping them with their critical thinking skills about what do I need to happen now in order that I can get on with my life? Because I always say you've only got one life. And the balance of energy. So this is not about sort of calm and nothing happening. It's about the paradox of momentum, keeping things going, but managing your tone and your energy so that people aren't sort of, you know, they're not put off by your fizziness and wondering how you're actually going to manage this process. So, as I say, no one knows what mediation's like until they've experienced it. And they cannot imagine how someone with no power and authority can help move them towards agreement until it happens. Mediators are tempted to use their expertise, especially lawyers, don't. Because you get in the way of the people who are there as lawyers. You've got legal knowledge, I've got legal knowledge, I use it. I use it to ask great questions. I don't use it to demonstrate that I have a brilliant and exhaustive understanding of the law, because of course, knowing judges and knowing how they use their discretion, I don't. The reason why I'm so focused on this idea of an experience is that when people do experience it as a mediator or party, it changes everything. Changes everything. They may not be able to articulate what it is, but the experience and our role as a mediator is to make whatever the outcome is, to make that experience a positive experience. Because by turning up and paying attention to what's going on now with these people and this problem, you are giving that set of circumstances the best chance of finding something that will work. And that working alongside, pointing in the same direction, is the very definition of collaboration, a word which I know gives people some discomfort because it has some baggage from wars and conflict. But anyway, collaboration means working together and for the same outcome. And as a mediator, we are demonstrating that we are alongside our parties. We're not on side, because that's departing from our independence and our even-handedness. But we are alongside and we are pointing in the same direction. Sometimes the parties want to go off that way. And it's our job to bring them back, guide them back, not yank them back. And this is actually a deep human practice, is cooperation and collaboration. We're hardwired to do this, but we need to feel safe. And so the experience of mediation is that it's a safe place to talk openly, even if you come with a huge amount of cynicism and concern and worries and unsures and all those kind of things that parties come. But it's our role to say, you know, you've got an opportunity today to do something which might actually take you to where you want to be. Most importantly, if people have a good experience, it's the best marketing. Still, after 25, 30 years of mediating, I am recommended. Very little, well, some work comes from my website, some work comes from LinkedIn, some work, but the vast majority of the work that I do comes from people who recommend me because they had a good experience. And I don't see that changing for, you know, dramatically. So just do it. One of the most successful sort of upsurges of uptake of mediation was in Nigeria. What did they do? They plonked themselves outside the court, or in the court, or actually they purloined a room, and they just made themselves available. And people came and they were persuaded to try it, and they tried it, and then they went and recommended it. And that's the kind of upward curve that happened there, and it's very well established. So just do it. Just do it. Do it in every aspect of your work, in meetings, in business, in consultancy. You don't even have to put a name to it. You just do it. You turn up, you pay attention, you create a safe space, you ask great questions, and you give people the responsibility of making a decision that is in their best interests. Never compromise on your values and never impose them on others. Really, people don't need to know why it works. They just need to know that it works. One of my favorite quotations now, when I I came across this quite recently. Scooby-Doo, I don't know if any of you know Scooby-Doo, but I'm sure some of you do. I can't hear you. My ears are so full of disappointment. And that applies to so many people around at the moment. A lot of people are very disappointed that things haven't turned out how they expected or planned. And if there's one of us after this extraordinary year that isn't disappointed because things haven't turned out or our plans have gone haywire, I'd be very surprised. So that's something that I give you. I can't hear you because my ears are so full of disappointment. And then during this pandemic, I have taken to my great love of reading voraciously. And since this time last year, slightly earlier, I've read 180 books. And that's a lot of books. And in the midst of all that, I've read the entirety of Agatha Christie. And for those of you who've never read Agatha Christie and can read Agatha Christie in whatever language, whether it's Greek or English, I really do highly recommend. It's great reading for mediators. And this is one of my favorite quotes that I came across in that reading. Because in conversation, you do not get merely the answers to questions. In ordinary conversational prattle, things slip out. People are on their guard when the subject may be dangerous to them. But the moment ordinary talk ensues, they relax. They succumb to the relief of speaking the truth, which is always very much easier than lying. So that's what part of our role is to help people relax and get them to tell us their story, so that we know what it is they actually want to achieve, rather than telling us what they think we want to hear. And that's quite a skill, to be able to do that in a reasonable amount of time and not let people completely run away with the whole, the time that we have available. But hearing people's stories and perhaps understanding that their ears are full of disappointment. And then this is a favorite quote of mine from Rumi. People need us. That's my title for this. But a story is like water that you heat for your bath. It takes messages between the fire and your skin. It lets them meet and it cleans you. Very few can sit down in the middle of the fire itself like a salamander or Abraham. We need intermediaries. And for that, read Mediators. Society has never needed mediators more than today. We have a lot of work to do, and we just need to show up, pay attention, listen to people, and guide them towards a decision which is in their interests. And one final thought before I hand over to your questions. If we could read the secret history of our enemies, we should find in each man's life sorrow and suffering enough to disarm all hostility. Mediation is not alternative. Thank you.
We thank you, Amanda. Αν θέλει κάποιος να σχολιάσει, να κάνει κάποια ερώτηση. Κύριε Πρόεδρε.
Hello, Amanda. If it is, hello, it's Dora from How Are You? Very nice to see you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Nice to see you too.
Yes, okay.
Did you have a question?
No, it was very good. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Would anybody like to challenge any of those hypotheses or proposals or insights that I have set before you?
Κυρία Κοτσάκη, με ακούτε?
Δεν σας ακούω αυτή τη στιγμή.
Σέργε, δεν με ακούει. Ξέρεις, ήθελα να μην μιλήσω αγγλικά, ήθελα να με διευκολύνει να μεταφράσει για να μην είναι περιορισμένο.
Το κάνω εγώ αυτό.
Το κάνεις?
Ναι.
Έτσι, για να μην περιορισμένος ο λόγος μου, θέλω ακριβώς να είναι αυτά που θα πω. Ευχαριστώ θερμώς την κυρία Bucklow. Δεν έχουμε ενδεχομένως ερωτήσεις ή υποθέσεις γιατί μας καθήλωσε. Πες, Σέργε, και θα συνεχίσω μετά.
Mr. Econom speaking. He said that you actually were very good and he does not have question because you were stunning. That is it.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Επίσης, ήθελα να εξηγήσω στο τέλος για ποιο λόγο δεν μιλάω στα αγγλικά, γιατί θέλω να είμαι στο λεξιλόγιο ακριβής στο ελληνικό. Επίσης, διεπίστωσα πόσο δασκάλα είναι η κυρία Bucklow.
Αυτό είναι σίγουρο.
Σε κάθε πρότασή της, ακόμη και ο τονισμός των λέξεων, το ύφος υποβάλλει και μεταδίδει.
He says that he realized that how a good teacher you are, and that in each and every sentence, the way you pronounce the words, the way you actually use your voice and your tone, was. Τι είπατε ακριβώς ότι έκανε για το ύφος?
Ναι.
Η μετάφραση αυτή είναι δύσκολη.
Ναι, μα γι' αυτό το έτσι straighten the words, each word, with its meaning and so on. Και κάτι θέλω να πω προσωπικά, μακάρι να την είχα γνωρίσει και να είχα ακούσει διαλέξεις της καιρό πριν.
He said that he wished that he had met with you earlier and had heard your lectures before.
Και αυτά που είπε δεν αφορούν μόνο τους διαμεσολαβητές, αφορούν όλους μας και ιδίως όσους έχουν αυτή την κοινωνική εμπειρία.
What you said is not true only for mediators, but everybody, and especially for those who have this experience of society.
Και τέλος, για να μην μονοπολίσω τη συζήτηση, ήθελα να πω ότι μου ενισχύει την πεποίθησή μου και την εκτίμηση για το πόσο σημαντική είναι η διαμεσολάβηση.
And lastly, what you said actually enforce, I would say, or make him believe more that his opinion about how important is mediation is in a way, how can I say that, was validated by what you said.
Thank you very much again.
No, well, thank you for being so complimentary. Those who have been in my classes will recognize the style of my presentation. I have, during this last year, really come to realize that as mediators, our time has come, because if we think that things are going to get better, yes, in some ways they will, but we have huge problems that are face us, and people are very afraid of the future. And it is difficult, it is truly difficult to cope with one's own apprehensions and concerns about the world and where it's going, and then to turn up and pay attention to those people that we are in service to. And I think that's the mental model that shifts the way in which we can work as mediators, is that we see ourselves as being in service to people who are navigating really difficult times, and they need to find joy, and they need to find hope, and they need to find some. We don't give that to them because that's false. It isn't in our gift to give it. But a good experience where they are honoured and respected and acknowledged and encouraged and supported in getting the hell out of some ghastly case that probably will never get to court anyway because it takes too long, is something that we can, it's something that we can do, and we can do it well. So long as we get our ego out of the way, that's the most important thing. We used to say in our classes, or Charles did, leave your ego at the door. And that's what we need to do. And then we are fully present to be able to absorb the complexities of the things that people are engaging, which mean hugely matter hugely to their lives.
Okay.
Joanna.
May I say something?
Hello, I'm so happy being with you tonight, and I feel privileged of being taught as a mediator by you. I would like you to share with us, if you are so kind, some tips or thoughts how to overcome the obstacle of the screen and come closer to people while mediating a case.
Right. Well, I'm happy to deal with that. I hope you have experienced that this evening,
Yeah.
because I have prepared in a very specific way. Firstly, there's the tech part of it. The gentleman whose initials are KO, who was very complimentary to start with, he made a comment which was about presence. And when I'm preparing to go on screen, I make sure that I'm absolutely here at my desk. But the techie things are the lighting behind the screen, so I'm well lit, so I don't look tired and drawn, right? I have got actually 2 lights, so that's actually working, because people don't want to see somebody who is looking washed out, or too far away, or but you don't want to be like that, because that's too much. That's almost like being that far from somebody's face. So your position and your framing within the screen is quite important. And getting your voice and being, and again, you mentioned the voice, the tone, the pace, that's quite important too. And doing a few voice exercises before, I do them, honestly, just to make sure that I've got that pitch right, and that it's calming, but it's also authoritative. So getting your presence right and being present, and also wearing something interesting, truly, not too much, but something that is interesting, that says that you've kind of thought about the way you are. And then you'll notice that I'm actually allowing my hands to come into the screen. And you need to adjust, you need to make sure that you are using your hands, that you are using open-handed gestures, as I taught you, all those years ago, but that you're not flapping around and being distracting, but a considered gesture or thoughtfulness. I mean, in person, I wouldn't necessarily do that. But if I've been listening to somebody online for a long time, I probably would, because it sort of says, I'm thinking, I'm pointing at my brain, I'm really considering this. But there are a number of ways. They have to be congruent with your style, using a good microphone. You know, truly, it's very important to invest in the tech, as it were, and a good camera. Making sure that you're looking around. You know, you have to think, because it's very easy just to look at yourself. That's the thing about Zoom, isn't it? Look at yourself. True, I can see some smirky smiles going on. But you have to make sure, if you've got a party, if you've got 12 parties, you need to be, you know, paying attention, right? Sometimes I'll say, oh, Mr. So-and-so, I'm just going to move you up so I can see you better. And everybody knows that in Zoom you can move people around. That's another thing. Checking in with people, giving them breaks, you know, not going on too long. Saying, I'm going to break now, wait 10 minutes, I'm going to run up and down my stairs, which I generally do. I'm going to run up and down my stairs. You have to take breaks in order to keep people's attention. They have to know that you are going to be paying attention, and when they're, you know, sagging a bit, you give them attention. So there's a combination. One is the tech and making sure you're being presented well. One is actually getting yourself prepared so that you are a canvas, but not boring. I'm in black today. Sometimes I don't always wear black, but today was a black day. And then making sure that you are putting your energy and somehow using your hand gestures to emphasize. Is that what you wanted, Lana?
Okay, very nice tip. Thank you very much.
There's a gentleman called Dimitris.
Yes, but before that, just to keep the order of the questions, Mr. Sony would like to...
Excuse me, Sergio, excuse me. I have put a message that I wanted to speak with respect. Is it possible? Your personal.
Δεν ξέρω που το στείλες.
Τα SMS σου, εδώ και ώρα. Δεν με προσέχεις, τι να κάνω τώρα εγώ. I'm sorry to have left for a few moments. I wanted to bring something to show to Amanda later on. But before doing this, and before letting you continue with the questions, I would like Amanda to tell you who is Mr. Kyriakos Ikonomou. I have welcomed him earlier, but in Greek. So, Mr. Kyriakos Ikonomou has been for many years a judge at the Supreme Court. At present, he is a member of the Central Commission of Mediation of the Ministry of Justice and the president of the Commission of Legal Matters. So his opinion is very important because, in addition, he has been a fan of mediation before even mediation was known in Greece in the recent times, I mean. So I wanted you to know him and to appreciate even more what he said about your presentation. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. That's nice to know.
So, Mr. Tony, and then I will give the speech to Mr. Evalomenos, would like to explain more about empathy, and particularly about the empathy for doing lawyers make the decision to accept to go to mediation. This is exactly as she said it. And she can explain if she wants.
So you'd like to know about empathy, particularly empathy in relation to lawyers.
What she says is, Πόλη, θες να εξηγήσεις?
Yes, yes, okay, thank you, Sergei. So my question is about the difficult situation here in Greece, Mrs. Bucklow, because the environment is not very friendly for mediation. We have many obstacles to resolve, especially from lawyers. Many times we can understand the willing of the parties to mediate, to find a friendly solution out of the courts, but we have lawyers that they don't help us. So would you please tell us about your experience, how we can have more empathy in the relationship that we have to establish with lawyers in the mediation. Because here in Greece, maybe you know, during the mediation, the presence of lawyers are mandatory. We cannot mediate without lawyers.
Thank you. And yes, I do, because I was the architect of the mediation pledge, which was signed in 2008. It is common all over the world. This is not a problem, it's a phenomenon. And the only way, I believe, there are two things that happen that help with this. There's no silver bullet, okay? There's two things that help. One is that the judges start wagging their finger and sending people to mediate. We have that quite a bit now, actually, quite a bit. In the last 5 months, I have had 4 or 5 cases where the judge has said, thou shalt mediate. Not in quite that way, but I think this would be a good case. And the lawyers sort of don't want to argue with the judge, so they go away and they do it. And they might be a bit reluctant, but not so much anymore. A lot of lawyers in the UK still haven't done any mediation. They're still getting lots of representatives who are not familiar, but they pretend they know it. That's one thing, is the getting the judges to say, go on, go and have a go. Don't come back here until case management, time. And then the other is, don't compete. Stop calling it alternative. Because when you call it alternative, you're saying, I am better than you are. I am a new improved version of what you do. I am anything but what it is. It was the worst idea anybody ever had to call it alternative dispute resolution. The worst. And I will say that until they put me in the ground and put a little stone slab on the top of me. It was not alternative, it is going to be on my gravestone. So don't compete, don't do the job. It's a partnership, it's a collaboration. You're helping people. If lawyers in Greece believe that mediation is going to reduce their income, then I want to hear from them personally, face to face. Do you believe there is a shortage of disputes in Greece? Do you believe that human beings are going to stop arguing simply because you do mediation? What about this, Mrs. Lawyer? How about you get a fabulous reputation for getting cases through, wallop, 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 like that? What about that as an option? I'm being slightly sarcastic because I cannot absorb the idea that resisting something which works, is intelligent, that would make me not use that lawyer for anything, including making a cup of tea. Right? So that's how I feel about it. Notwithstanding all that, it's people who are fearful of being shown to be less than. I come back to, don't call it alternative. It's like alternative medicine, you know, when you've actually exhausted all the drugs and the treatments, then you start taking coffee beans because somebody says that that's a good idea for the condition you've got. That's the kind of baggage, right, that comes with it. So call it anything you like, call it whatever you like. But if you are fixed on only doing a structured, court-appointed mediation, then you'll have to deal with that. But if you want to be a mediator down to your toes and work as a mediator, then you'll do it. And a rose by any other name smells just as sweet.
Thank you very much. So we can invite them, so we can invite them to collaborate or to discuss with them the case.
Yes.
And sometimes invite them to give us some ideas.
Well, yes.
How we could go through the process, for instance.
Yes, and ask them to tell you about their clients, what will work, what's the relationship been like. So you can actually design the process, right?
Yes.
Let me help you do a good job, right? I'll walk alongside you. That's the mediator mentality. I've spent my entire career making lawyers look good, right? That's all I've done.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Avalomena, you have the speech.
Thank you. Much obliged, Amanda. Congratulations. It was a great experience. Very short presentation, but full of thoughts. So if you can hear me, some practical tips I would like to ask from you. For example, to which extent and how much the procedure can be relaxed. For example, the parties to sit around or stand instead of sitting be by the window, or not typically sitting around a table. Do you take into account the time of the day or the days when mediation will take place? For example, some people are morning, people some other afternoon, and so on. What about the dress codes? Do you pre-agree about them? I mean, those kind of practical points. The other topic I would like to ask you: who is normally willing to become a mediator, a lawyer or not a lawyer? And your last slide was not an alternative, and you repeated it now again. So how do you believe that people, the parties, may become aware of the value of mediation? Would it be the state? Would it be lawyers? Would it be the social surrounding, the advertising by mediators, the media? How this social culture can move to a concept that mediation is not an alternative? I mean, I hope my questions are not many, but you can choose. I mean, if you can choose, I mean, whatever you like to reply. Many thanks in advance.
Okay, so I think the first, thank you. I think the first thing you asked me is what are the, what techniques do I have for encouraging people, or for how do I deal with people wanting to stand, or that code of dress, or any kind of sort of particular circumstances. That, I think that was your first sort of topic. Okay, let me answer that. For me, I dress professionally. If I am going to be surrounded by lawyers and QCs and, you know, mega rich entrepreneurs, then I'll probably put on my most barristorial suit. But I'll probably put something quirky on with it as well. I do think about how to dress. I just am. So I'm always smartly dressed, and I like my wardrobe, and it is part of my personality. So I don't think anybody would ever be surprised about what I was wearing. Tends to be practical, pockets, so I can put my notebook on. This is the kind of book I use for mediating. I use it this way up for one party, and I use it that way up for the other party, so I don't get it muddled up. So I need a garment in which I can put my notebook, so it's not left anywhere, so people can read it. That's practical. In terms of what do I ask people to do, I actually find that it doesn't matter, actually, because people are what they are. You know, if a farmer turns up in his welly boots, welly boots and a jumper with holes in it, well, you know, he's not in court. So, you know, if he feels comfortable like that, I'm fine. I don't pay attention. I just make sure I look like I'm a professional, prepared, ready person. Everybody else can be what they like. As far as people standing up and accommodating different things, yeah, I've had lots of people who couldn't sit down for hours and hours and hours. They were standing up. So we all stood up. And we talked standing round, you know. I do remember one mediation I did, there were 300 people, and I did it at a football stadium on my own, right? There were 300 people in this football stadium, and they were all testosterone-fueled contractors, construction people. And they didn't come in suits. No, they came in their work gear. And it's the rapport, you know, it's about turning up and being, and then you stop worrying about a presentation or a way in which you are, because people need to relate to you. Not too much humor, not too much flippancy, but just authentic. I know that word's overused these days, but just kind of, you know, what you see is what you get. That's that. I remember, well, if I could tell one story, I don't know what the time's like, but one story. I remember two entrepreneurs, mega rich they were. They'd had the most amazing fallout. They were ready to hire contract killers on each other, right? And I spoke to one and I said, where would you like to meet? I'm not sitting in a room. I'm not sitting in a room. I'm not sitting in a room all day. I'm not doing that. I said, okay, you know, we don't have to sit in a room. So he said, well, what are we going to do then? He was being quite a bit clever with me, actually. So I said, we can meet in Regent's Park. It happened to be in the middle of summer, so I was quite happy that the weather would be all right. But my fingers crossed. I don't know what I was doing. I said, we'll meet in Regent's Park. Oh, he said, well, if you can get other mega rich man, if you get him to agree to that, you're my girl, sort of thing, right? So I thought, oh no, I've got to get him to agree. So I did. I got them both to agree to meet in Regent's Park, and I ordered a really nice picnic lunch in a basket, you know, with wine and glasses. And we met on the table near the duck pond. We had the opening meeting there, no lawyers, actually, as it happens. We had the opening meeting there, and then I had the private meetings walking around the duck pond, right? So, and they were timed beautifully. So I walked around the duck pond with one and left him, and then I picked up the other one and I walked around the duck pond again. Do you know that mega complex deal was done, agreed, by 12 o'clock, we sat down and ate the picnic and drank the wine. Now, I'm not saying everybody does that, but what I'm saying, if you turn up and pay attention and somebody says, I'm not sitting in the room, you don't say, well, you've got to sit in the room. You say, where would you like to meet? It's an extreme example, but people, another mediation I did, it was in the most beautiful room. It was called, it had a cabinet of wonders, and it was all sorts of artwork and really curious pieces, antiques, ancient pieces of engineering, what have you. And that really turned people's brains into the right way to deal with this mediation, because they were so fascinated by these things. It really opened up their ability to listen because of curiosity. So I think my comment to you would be, don't resist it, explore. It doesn't matter. There is no procedure. You cannot be found guilty of breaking procedure.
Thank you very much for that.
So, thank you.
Do you want to add something, Mr. Valomene?
But I said thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
So, Mr. Meidanis asked for
All right.
Amanda.
Harris.
Hi. Very nice to see you again after so many years.
I know. You're not a baby mediator anymore, are you, Harris?
I don't know. Try not to be, I don't know. Anyway, Amanda, your very last word about procedure actually is a good breeze for me to discuss what I was thinking of discussing with you, which is law and mediation. You touched upon the matter while you were talking, and you said that you know, there's not much law in mediation, and we as lawyers, most of us are lawyers anyway, should not behave as lawyers during mediation. Nevertheless, dispute resolution is about law in many ways, and I understand that the way that most people, at least in this country still, would approach mediation would be as if it is really about law, not simply because it is a dispute resolution mechanism. So the question is, how do we mitigate, or rather, how do we, you know, manage to change this point of view of people that, you know, mediation should be related to law somehow, and we as lawyers, how do we behave in a mediation by, you know, taking off our lawyer's hat completely, because I understand this is what we need to do. One important, okay, you tell me, but I mean, one important point is that the way that mediation is structured in Greece, as you may know already, following the law on the, you know, compulsory mediation initial meeting, makes people, you know, over-legalize mediation in a way. So that's an extra tip for you. So I don't know if I was clear enough in my question.
That's okay. You say the mandated mediation makes people overly, and I didn't catch
legalistic in many ways.
Legalistic, right? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, because we're talking about, you know, the formality questions. How do we invite people to come in the mediation? Should it be in writing? Should it not be in writing? And then when you have any agreement you may have, will it be an enforcing title, for example? Will it not? All this kind of stuff.
Right. Okay, I get your point, and yes, most mediators agree. Most mediators in the UK, you know, have a legal background. I will argue with you until the sun don't rise anymore, Harris. Right? That mediation is always against the landscape of the law. It must be, right? It's always against the backdrop. It is part of the, but when you try and say this, I go back to my alternative, it's a continuum, right? You've got negotiation, informal agreements that everybody makes every day of their lives, even down to which colour socks their children will wear, right? That's it, right? And then you go all the way through until you're at the Supreme Court, right? And any point in there, there's always, the law exists to represent the power to make people behave if they don't choose to behave on their own. That's what the law is there for, right? If you remember that, and you have that as one of your values, and I am deeply respectful of the law, it has been my lifeblood since I was at university. But when I look at this, I say to myself, negotiation is for grown-ups. People who say, hey, made a mess of that, let's sort it out. Mediation is for grown-ups who've got themselves into a corner and they need a bit of help getting out of that corner. And you do need to know the law in order to be able to work on the questions and options, the opportunities. What happens if you don't agree or find an agreement today? So that's what it is, the backdrop. It's a backdrop, if you like, is a kind of threat, actually, in a way. It is what the law is, which is a threat. If you don't behave, you will be told to behave, right? Now, I say litigation, which I have deep respect for, I say litigation is for the certifiably insane. The reason I say that is because if you are given the opportunity all along the way and you still want to go there, then you must sign up for the consequences of that. You must sign up for the stress, the cost, and the weight. And sadly, our access to justice is defined by the number of people who want access to justice. Now, I don't know the figures in Greece, but I do know the figures in the UK. You know, 3 million cases started, proceedings started. Nothing like that ever get to court. They fall away. So I say my role is in that bit where people have got themselves into a corner and they need a bit of help getting out. That's where I say I sit. I'm very clear about my market. And then if people still don't want to sort their heads out, I will go right up to a case and beyond when it's actually been handed down and it's still not working. I've mediated cases that have a decision on them and it's come back to mediation. So I don't think the law is always there. It's very important. It's been very valuable to me. Just because I don't practice as a lawyer doesn't mean to say it isn't an essential part of my practice. It is. But I come at it from a point of view of, this is an opportunity. If you want to take it, I'll help you get there. And I'll work bloody hard, excuse the language, to help you get there. And I'll stick with it when you're giving up. But if at the end of the day, you decide you want to blow yourself up, I'll let you blow yourself up. And the minute, you don't necessarily use those words, Harris, but the minute that person believes that you are paradoxically absolutely alongside, you will help them do their risk assessment. that is what it is. And you need the law and understanding of the law. And that's why you work with the lawyers. You work with the lawyers to make them work at doing what they should do. Because very often, in my experience, you're rescuing lawyers from the fact that they got too close to the client and they're not brave enough to say this case is rubbish.
Sure. Yeah, but
And media. I remember having in one mediation again, it had big numbers on it, and this barrister was a lovely guy, and he was working very hard for his client, and his client was not being very helpful. And one of these accidental meetings, which you can't do on Zoom, but you can in person, I bumped in. He said, "Amanda, can I have a word with you?" And I said, "Sure, yes." So we went into this private room and he started running this point by me. You know, he was doing his argument. And I'm thinking, right, okay. And then I haven't got my glasses. I had my glasses on. And I had very good rapport with this guy. So this is a funny story. I had very good rapport with this guy. And I pulled my glasses down to the end of my nose and I looked over the top and I said, "Aren't you glad you practiced that on me and not on the judge?" and he laughed, because what I knew was, I knew that he'd been told to come and go and try that, you know, go and run that point on that. And he had to come, and he knew it was ridiculous. But the poor guy had to do it. And of course, then it wasn't me being on side or me being not even-handed, but then he kind of knew I was a partner with him in this, in managing his client, not telling him how to manage his client, but being supportive by asking the right sort of questions. Does that make sense, Harris?
It does, a lot. And while you were, you know, answering to this, you know, I sort of recalled your reference to values in your initial presentation, and you said now one of your values is preservation of the law, in a way. Or
yes, it is. Yes.
It is. And what I'm trying to say is that this is your value by all means, and I assume this should be the value of all of us in this virtual room. The question is this the case with all lawyers, with all, sorry, mediators? And on top of that, even if it is, I mean, how does this is conveyed to the people that, you know, we are in a room where eventually the law is in the background, therefore we sort of not risk too much, but at the same time, how do we know that, you know, this will be like that eventually, and that, you know, the law will prevail one way or another? You see what I mean?
I do know what you mean, and I think that comes with practice and confidence, Harris. You know, I know that when I'm talking to people before I mediate, I know that they're absolutely certain that I will take no nonsense. You know, I mean, not beginning the runaround, that I'm absolutely committed to helping them, that I have got experience in doing so. And in terms of all you, that can be your legal experience or your business experience. You've got experience to draw on. And I think that being fake and trying to be a certain kind of mediator won't help you. Just bring your experience and your wisdom and the experience that you have of dealing with people, and you bring that and you tell the person or the people that you are, whether it's the lawyers or the parties, and don't forget to talk to the parties, because they are your allies in getting the lawyers on side. That's what most of my colleagues have missed in 25 years of practice. I am the only mediator I know of who from the very start has always spoken to the parties. Why? Because the legal thing gets in the way. Why shouldn't I talk to the people who are paying the bill? They're paying for the mediation. It's their problem. What am I doing? No lawyer has ever said, "Oh, don't do that, Samantha." don't talk to my client. Not one. Because I say to them, look, I'd really like to touch base with the client. This is going to be a really important day for them. I just want the opportunity to let them check me out because they're going to be, working with me. I also want to tell them how I work. I want to give them an idea of how the day will run and what the opportunities are, and maybe a little bit about negotiation. I've done that since day one. And it's always paid dividends. Because when I arrive, I don't say, good morning, I'm Amanda Bucklow and I'm your mediator today. They don't want to know I'm your mediator today. They want to know that they've got somebody walking in there this is a team, lawyers, parties, mediator. We've got our eye on the prize, and the prize is getting out of here with a solution that everybody can live with. And no, it's not win-win. It's lose a bit, lose a bit. And what do the parties want to know? Is he feeling the same amount of pain as I am? Is that pain shared? Can you see that? Those are my little Greek scales of justice that I bought in Plaka. No, Monsteraki. Yes. And they sit on my desk as a reminder of what I'm about.
Great, thanks.
You didn't expect that, did you, Harris?
Well, no, but always good to know.
Okay, Harry, τελείωσες?
Ναι, ευχαριστώ πολύ. Ευχαριστώ.
There is a question from Facebook by Mandy Maleviti. She wants to know how you help the party to get off the difficult being in the middle of the problem forced by... let me read it just a minute. So it's how you help the party to address the problem with when his lawyer is forcing him not to mediate because the lawyer believes that he will definitely win everything in the court. How do you deal with that, especially as you said, when by speaking to the party?
Well, I'd say, and I have said to the lawyer, and please don't take this as flippant. It is an example of the spirit of how you deal with this. Will that lawyer write down and sign a cast iron guarantee that that person will win at court on his arguments? And that sorts them out. I've had mediation, I've had one barrister in one room and one barrister in the other one. This one's saying 60%. They always say 60%. No, there are very few that say 70 or 75%. Let 60% in this room and 60% in that room. And I say, well, that makes 120%. I don't say anything else because 120% certainty just doesn't work. And it's not about knocking down their arguments. I accept, completely accept, either one of them might be right. I think the problem is that I'm not saying they're wrong. What I'm saying is you've got an opportunity today to negotiate something which is bound to be better than winning, because even if you win, right, you won't win everything. But you've got the chance today to decide and to decide and choose which parts of that imaginary decision that your judge is going to hand down, which parts are most important to you. And what are you going to trade? To me, that's why I never practiced as a lawyer, is because I just like the negotiation so much. Come on, what are you going to trade? What has he got that is worth something to you, but is worth less to him? And that's that's how new inventions come about. That's how people grow their business. Conflict is good. the way we handle it is not. Conflict, respectfully handled, is the absolute nucleus of growth, new business opportunities, new family opportunities, if you are prepared to sit and argue respectfully with each other. And the mediator is the referee in those circumstances. So Mandy on Facebook, I hope that answered your question.
I hope it answers, I think it answers all many questions together. There is another from Vicky Ladaki, she's on Zoom. What is your common preparation of a mediation case?
Say again, Sergio.
What is your common preparation of a mediation case? How do you prepare for mediation? Right,
how do I prepare for a case? Okay. First of all, you'll be surprised to hear I don't read everything. Because well, actually these days people are sending fewer papers, which is plus and a minus, because they leave stuff out that's important sometimes. But in the old days, we used to get, you know, lever arch files, piles and piles of them, and 3 hours to prepare, and often repetition of the documents, for court documents, again and again and again and again and again. What do I want to know? I want to see the correspondence between the parties and the lawyers. I like to see the correspondence. I want to see how they communicate with each other and where might it have gone wrong. I want to know what the issues are, you know, because if I don't turn up at the mediation, and I don't know what the legal issues are, right, then they're not going to pay very much attention to me. So I need to understand what the legal issues are as set out in the case. Always careful to stick to those, because very often the case is not what the papers say it's about. And that's because of the filters we apply. So when something horrible happens and a commercial party misbehaves, or any party misbehaves, first of all, we tell the story to somebody else and they say, you should do something about that. And then we go and tell it to a lawyer, and the lawyer says, yes, I know, yes, you can do something about that. But then the actual facts and the balance of the facts go through a very particular kind of filter, because it has to fit what can be handled in the law, right? So all that other stuff gets sort of lost along the way. And then in my jurisdiction, if it proceeds and then the barrister is briefed, there's another filter that goes on the facts, and he or she tweaks those in order to make the best possible case. By this time, what's in the papers could be a very long way from what actually caused the problem in the first place, right? That's why mediation is so amazing, because you go back in the room and you say, well, this is what the court papers say it's about. Tell me what happened, and tell me, you know, what you want to achieve today. And what are the questions that you really need to know the answers to? What is it that you really need to know the answers to today? And how will we do that? And so there's a kind of approach to dealing with the case and the legal issues in a way that actually allows for the real needs and interests to sort of come back into the mix. And in that way, sometimes that's why an agreement is possible, because some of those things that have been lost along the way were actually quite important. And the answers to those are, most importantly, very important for the future.
Thank you very much. Do you think that it's a good tactic to have a private meeting with the lawyers before the mediation begins, with each one separately? Or depends on the case?
No, it doesn't really depend on the case. It depends on the people. I think by the time you've got to the mediation, you've got to forget about the case to a point, and you have to start focusing on the people. How are you going to get these people to talk to each other? And if you think there's a lawyer who's a little bit out of his depth, her depth, or is feeling, you know, very anxious, maybe they've got performance anxiety, which is, I've come across that a lot, being worried about, you know, how am I supposed to be in this thing called mediation? I know what I'm supposed to do when I go to court. I know all about that, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be here. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, which is why it's really important for the mediator, me, I speak with the lawyers beforehand. And I ask them, I say, have you been in a mediation before? And if they, and I do it in a way that the tone is not, haven't you been in a mediation before? Don't you know anything about mediation? I just assume that there's still a vast amount of the world out there, the legal world, that hasn't been in a mediation yet. And I just feel like, ooh, a new one, another one I can actually bring into the fold. That's how I approach it. What would you like to know? You're going to be very helpful to me today because I can, I see that you know, your client is not very well. I see that your client has been very stressed by this. You engage them authentically in this partnership. I'm going to work with you to help you get a great deal.
Okay, that was very enlightening. Thank you so much.
We have another question from Facebook again. Mariana Tsulia. She wants to know which are the fundamental steps for a new mediator that this mediator needs to take in order to create a good fame on his behalf, so as the other people choose him or her as a mediator. Could it be lobbying, advertisement, or public speaking, or something else?
Doing it wherever you can, schools, just getting the practice, because the more you do it, the more you understand about yourself and the better you can present yourself. So when you're starting out, volunteer, you know, things, and I know it's tough because you need to make a living. We all do. So that's why most people do a sort of 50-50. You know, they have a mediation practice, they have their law practice, or they have their accountancy practice, or they have whatever it is. Me, I was the only idiot who walked straight out of my training and never did anything else. And it was hard. But it was just the way I was. I just decided that, you know, when I was doing the training, my training, I thought, why didn't they tell me I could do this at university? Because my father was chief prosecutor of the Kenya police. My mother was a nurse. My father was facts and evidence, and he was a brilliant prosecutor, and he hated sending people to the gallows. So he used to go out into the bush and sit down with the, you know, with Africans and negotiate gun amnesties. He was all about facts and evidence. I could never get anything past him unless I got my facts straight, right? So I lived with a legal mind all my life. And my mother was a nurse and she was all about people and feelings. So they had terrible rows. For me, I did my first mediation at 4.5 years old. When I went to my mother and said, Mummy, Daddy doesn't mean that. He means this. And I went to my dad, Mummy doesn't mean that. She means this. And I think it's that mentality about sorting out who you are and what you want to do, where you come from, and then promoting yourself is find a niche, find an area where you've got a reputation already in some field. I mean, for example, where's Joanna gone? Joanna's in fashion. well, she was when I was last in contact. It's not about limiting your vision to law per se, but law is in service of the world. So what is the area in which you have specific? Is it renovation? Is it wills, probate? Is it IP? Is it IT? There are masses of areas where you can actually find a niche, and your contacts, people that you have worked with in the past, you know, try it, you might like it. You know, that's my philosophy, try it, you might like it. So advertising, yeah. Website, prove you are who you are, yes. But nothing beats just doing it whenever you can, in whatever, and even in your work. You don't have to tell people you're mediating. You just do it. And then you have a success, or you have some kind of outcome that becomes a case study.
I think I saw a hand raised earlier. Does anybody want to say anything?
Oh yes, Nasia.
Nasia, yes.
Yes, hello. Hello, Amanda. Hello, everybody. I heard you talking before about the lawyers in mediation and how they treat their clients and how we should engage them in the whole process. I find this to be the hardest thing because, as you know, this is the first stage we're going through mediation in Greece, and it is the compulsory, let's say, mediation. You have to pass this step before going to court. So what usually lawyers do, they call you and they say, okay, we see mediation as a procedural step only. We don't care about joining in, and certainly our clients won't join you. So you're left there and you're trying to convince them that the clients have to join in, because I've seen that when the clients join in, it is much easier to persuade them to take part in this mediation and eventually, you know, proceed and try to find the solution. So the main problem I see here is how to I don't know, how to deal with lawyers that are so negative.
Well, first of all, are there that many? And secondly, I think that's an abusive process, you know, just saying, oh, this is a procedural step. Okay, it happens. I mean, it happens here. You know, people even turn up in small claims. For example, there's a court mediation service, very successful, absolutely fantastic. The quality of mediators is right. But if the one person who is, you know, the defendant turns up and doesn't make an offer, what can you do about it? No? You can't do anything about it. So if a solicitor or lawyer brings you and says, oh, well, we've got to do this procedural step in mediation, and but, you know, he's not turning up, then there's a clarifying question there. Is that a decision your client's made, or is that something that you've recommended? Is that the advice that you've given? Right. So is it the client who's not turning up, or is it the lawyer who said don't bother and it's just a procedural step? Now, depending on what the answer is, say, well, look, it's booked. You know, my time's booked. So why don't you try it? Because, you know, at the end of the day, you could end up with something really helpful, even if it's only understanding the issues better or whatever. I mean, what I always find very interesting is when people resist, or lawyers resist mediation, because I always think, why wouldn't you want to come and see what the witness is like? I know that's a bit naughty for a mediator, isn't it? Because I don't particularly want people to come fishing, but I think from the point of view of just intelligence, you know, using your brain, why wouldn't you why wouldn't you want to come and engage, even if it's only for, how long is it? An hour or 2 hours? Nasia?
Well, I've done that. It's an hour. Usually the lawyers, they want to join in. Well, at least I can drag them in. I've managed to drag them in so far. The problem is that they are very, very protective with their clients, and they don't want their clients to have direct contact with the mediator.
Why?
Maybe they feel they're losing part of the control.
Do they think that because you're a lawyer, you might need their client to take their business?
No, I don't think so. I actually don't know what they think.
Maybe they are afraid that they might choose mediation in the end, and they don't want it, because they believe they will lose money.
Please, may I say something on this topic?
Sure.
Okay, I think I have the same problem very often with lawyers. So when I'm going on a compulsory or mandatory first session of mediation regulated by the Greek law, the lawyer always wants to go on and don't let me communicate with his client. But I think that is a matter of the personality or of approaching the lawyer. That means I think that I always succeed to approach the lawyer and let me to communicate with his client. This is a question of communication between the mediator and the lawyer.
It is.
The way you are going to ask to speak to him and to explain to him that you have to speak with his client. So we can succeed to have the access to the other party, to the client, without, for a first communication on the phone, and after, during the session, for communicate with the other party, not only with lawyers.
It is a repeating pattern. And I think that confident, competent, enthusiastic lawyers will not find a problem with this. So it's why are people so afraid of mediation? But it is an enduring question. I don't know the answer. I think it's a habit. It's a habit. And we have to find a way of breaking that habit. And I have worked really hard on doing that. As I said, I don't recall, I'll probably get one now, but I don't recall ever anybody saying, oh, I don't want you to speak to my client, because I am independent. I am, I don't have any vested interest in this. So what are you doing? This is a question for self-reflection. What do you do? What is it in your tone? What is it in your approach that puts these people on their back foot? Because I don't think this is only about them. I think it is about you. I don't mean you personally, I mean you. I think it is. It's it's the approach. It's that if I approach parties and I just sound like, this is what I do, right? You think people are going to argue with me? I'm sure that's what it is. This is how I work. This is how I look at things. This is the way that it works. It's all in consultation with you. If at any point you want to discuss with me that something isn't working for you, then you please, just let me know and we can talk about it. But it's that openness, you know, straight back, and very open front. And when you are non-threatening, then I think you'll get better engagement. There's something to learn about the approach, tone, language, and energy that comes across. And if at the end of the day you get all that right, then move on. Next one. Yeah.
True.
Plenty of people would, you know, really, really like your skills and your attention and your time and your commitment. And if that person doesn't want, you just got to say, okay, I'm very sorry. I would have loved to have helped you, but if you don't want to cooperate, somebody else is down the line. Life's too short.
Thank you.
May I intervene? May I intervene?
Catherine, it's your show.
I would like to say, Amanda, that lawyers, there are two obstacles for them to appreciate mediation. First, don't forget, you have told us that in England, very often, alternative dispute resolution is considered to be alarming drop in revenue.
Oh, that's ages now. No.
Oh, yes. But
way past that. What do we call it now? Oh, it's got another ghastly name. I told you, I don't like it. You will never hear ADR come out of my mouth. And my students, some of whom are on this call, know that very well.
Yes, but Greek lawyers still believe in what I've told you right now. One. Second, in as much as most of the mediators, almost all, are lawyers, mediators think that, the lawyers of the parties think that possibly if their clients fall in love with the mediator, the next case they will have, the next court case, will be entrusted with the mediator. And believe me, this is
but
true.
the mediator is not allowed to do that.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Well, if you were allowed to do that in Greece.
No, we are not.
Right. When you sign a mediation agreement as a mediator, you may not take on that work of that person in the future. You can't act as a consultant or in a professional capacity. So why is it a problem? I don't know. Do you know what I would do in your shoes? I think I would do a bit of research. I would really ask some people, what is it? What is it that goes on when somebody says mediate? What do you think? Because the story keeps going on, and it's probably more to do with worrying that there isn't a decision at the end of it. That it is money spent on the mediator and the lawyers, and there's no guarantee of a decision. The answer to that is, well, you know, for the 25, nearly 30 years it's been active in other jurisdictions, the settlement rate is still way up. And that means both parties were okay with the decision, not just one, if at all. So it is, I said I don't have a silver bullet. What I do say is that I think it's just habitual, and I don't think people really think about it. And I think it is possible that they think, and that's because they don't know that when you sign the mediation agreement, you're saying, no, I'm mediating. That's my relationship here as an independent person. There may be some some advertising or education needs to happen. What I do think was really helpful in some jurisdictions was training the judges, not to be mediators necessarily, although in training them to be mediators, they better understood what mediation was about and the opportunities, because I still think that that sort of finger wagging from the top and the business case from the bottom is important. And of course, the role of mediator is very, very ancient, and even the word comes from the Greek, so you should know all about it, really. There was a special Greek slave who was chosen particularly for their personality, and their role was to be confidant to the household from the top to the bottom. And the penalty for breaching confidentiality was death. So, at the end of the day, we are what we are. We do what we do. If people want to buy our services, then, you know, get on with it. I think fretting about it too much gives them an excuse to say no. I think the minute you say, you take no, say, okay, well, you know, fine. So, I'm just surprised you're not prepared to even spend an hour just finding out what it is. I'm really surprised. I think it's developing an approach which is committed, and if you want to blow yourself up, I'll let you. Sergio.
I don't see any other question on Facebook. There is an appeal, let's say, that if you want to do a course about mediation, to inform us, so as we can participate. This is one, and it's from Evanthea Nicolaidi. I think I cannot see the full name. She says, I'm not a lawyer, but my personal experience is that lawyers believe that a mediator is superfluous for a settlement. They say that until now, they always made settlements approved by the court or notary, and that the mediating process will only incur extra costs for the parties. I hope that they will start having positive experiences and gradually change their opinion.
So a mediator is superfluous to the negotiation and settlement of a deal. Interesting. The reason why I say that is because it's a whole other topic about the third person, right? It's quite different. A mediator generating negotiation is quite different from negotiating yourself. So that's an assumption that is made that is superfluous. But of course, the mediator has to be quite good at generating negotiation. And that's usually around getting people to make the first offer, because everybody says, I'm not making the first offer. I'm not making the first offer. You go round and round the houses. And my response to that is, well, whoever makes the first offer gets an advantage, right? Because you're putting the stake in the ground, and it's just negotiation theory since human beings walk the planet, that's kind of where everything moves from. So whoever puts the first figure on the table, well thought through, is setting the tone for the entire negotiation. Why wouldn't you want to be first? Why somebody says they don't want to come to the mediation because it puts extra costs on it and they could do it themselves. Well, I want to say, well, why haven't you done it then? If it's so easy to do, why is it even in court? Or why is it before the court? Because it's not. And our role is actually reality testing, risk assessment, option generation. And we bring different ideas, and we actually take people back and take them slowly through their justification. Because very often the justification for staying in the position that they started in is flawed, truly flawed. But that again is another sort of fairly extensive topic. It's excuse. I think it's not a real reason not to mediate. If you've tried it and it failed, fair enough, you've got some experience. But I go back to my presentation. It's about the experience.
Mm-hmm. I think Christina wanted to say something. Or she raised her hand.
Yes. Sarantopoulou.
Yes. Hello, Amanda. Nice to see you again and to hear your voice too.
Nice to see you.
And I think the reason that lawyers are afraid of mediation is what you already said. They are not prepared to argue respectfully. Prepared means to have a certain preparation, to think out of the box, out of their papers that they already have in front of them, as if they were at court. So, and also they are not prepared to argue respectfully. I don't think that we are very much in the culture of arguing respectfully. We argue, but not very respectfully. And this is a problem of culture, and this is what has to change. That we need to learn to discuss the problems and not to be afraid to look at them straight away, and be brave and accept that at some points we may be wrong. And this is a matter
well,
of
Greeks admitting they're wrong. Now there's a new thought.
This is what you said. You leave your ego behind. Well, this is something very difficult.
I know.
This is why mediators are being challenged, because maybe the lawyers, they want to impose themselves on mediators.
What I find difficult to quite square, and you might be able to help me here, I'm not being funny, is the vast majority of mediators in Greece are lawyers, right? So what does that mean, you guys? Why do you get it and the others don't? That's the question. I've not got the answer. So why do some people get it and some people don't? I think it goes more to who people are and their own sense of comfort with newness, change, trying something. That's a human thing. It's not a lawyer thing. Although the training for lawyers is very specific about, you know, a sort of way of seeing the world, black and white. And arguably those who become mediators don't see the world black and white, and you know, the more you practice, the more you know that there are shades of grey. But I just find lightness, invitation, rather than pressing and persuading. You know, try it. If you've never been part of a mediation, then really, you really ought to try it, because if you don't, then you're talking nonsense, aren't you?
Definitely, yes.
So
there is one more question from Facebook. Maybe, I don't know if it will be the final one because it's 8:35, but the question says from Miki Exarchatou. She says that she's not a lawyer. she's working for many years in a shipping company. Is there any particular reason to specialize her studies at mediation, which she would love to do, or to check her ability and talents to be a mediator in general sections?
Well, usually specializing in a particular sector is a benefit because you already know lots of people in that sector and they know you professionally, and therefore they are likely to recommend you as a mediator. When I started mediating, there wasn't enough work in any sector at all. We didn't know any, I mean, none of us actually even conceived of the idea that you would be a specialist mediator in a particular field. And I've always believed that that is a marketing thing, right? Because it's easy for people to say, I'm a mediator in this field that I've been working in as a lawyer or as an accountant or whatever. And therefore it speaks to the ego and the expertise. I've mediated every kind of dispute. Otherwise, I never would have got a career off the ground and it's applying the skills and using the skills and engaging in a partnership with the lawyers, using their knowledge. And that's because I've never threatened anybody. And I'm very often the mediator to mediate disputes in law firms. Why? Because I'm not a practicing lawyer. It makes them feel comfortable that it isn't somebody, you know. So you're not a lawyer and you're working in shipping. Shipping is a great field to be doing mediation. You know, there's lots of areas, particularly sort of in the marine sector. There's quite a lot coming through because of COVID, and a lot of disputes coming through because of that, particularly in construction, but also marine and environmental areas. Those are very, very ripe areas for mediation. So experience in areas that are associated with that. But the main benefit is people want to know that you understand the context, both the business context and the legal context in which you are mediating. You do not need to be an absolute expert. There are people who choose very high profile barrister mediators in my jurisdiction because what they want is they want to pay half the price for the opinion. They share it. They share it with the other parties. So two parties pay for one opinion. They may go to the mediation thinking that, but the senior mediators that I know who are my colleagues, they don't let them get away with that. You know, if I ever get parties who are just there to tick the box, I say, well, you're here now, so we might as well have a go. Are you up for that?
Yeah.
It's that lightness, holding people like that, doing that makes them fight, doing that. And if they hop off, well, you know, you have to be very committed and you have to not care. That's the paradox of being a mediator. You have to be very professional and relaxed. There are all kinds of dual natures that you come to terms with, and it's been very useful in life, I have to say, when two apparently completely opposite things are true in that moment.
Thank you very much for that. I don't see any other questions, nor at Facebook nor in Zoom, so I think I'll give the speech to Catherine.
Amanda, I would like to put a question to you. Do you remember what is the gift you gave us at the end of the training?
Was it a pen?
No.
Oh, maybe a notebook.
No.
Give up. I give up.
This is why I left earlier. I wanted to bring the gift, but I did not find it quickly, so I came back. You gave us a sponge.
Oh, a sponge, yes. Yes, 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 a sponge. Yes.
And what did you say to us? I give you this because you have to absorb the knowledge about mediation as sponge,
yes,
water.
Well, I can tell you that was a really fierce negotiation in Plaka. We went to several shops, did Charles and I, and we absolutely beat them up until we got a really good price.
And another question, do you have the family photo we made the day?
Yes, I do. And I also have from your group the lovely necklace, which was very nice. So all treasured memories. And it's lovely to see, you know, that people are still with it and still trying, because it is worth it. It's not going to make you rich, but it is something that really makes you feel like you're in the right place at the right time with the right people.
Thank you.
And that's...
Last but not least, you said at the beginning of your presentation that you have started writing poems. Can you tell us one of the poems?
Oh my goodness. Right, just hold on a second whilst I what's it called? Okay. Where is it? Okay. Quite sort of, you know, what do you call it? Deep and meaningful. So, what is it? Okay, this is one. As I lie upon the grass, I feel the warmth of summer sun and blossoming earth. In calmness and serenity, I seek my home amongst the stars. Are you real, glorious bright light, black night, night sky? You do seduce me so. As I lie upon the grass, I feel your warmth, the glow of light that travels far. No guarantee you will arrive, my faith or your illusion. Are you real, glorious bright light, black night, night sky? You can entice me so. From dust to dust means nothing at all. From light to light in velvet night, I will dissolve before I come again.
We applaud, thank you very much. And we will be grateful if you could send it to us by email.
Well, I hope you understood it. It's about seeing a star and knowing that it's extinguished by the time you see the light. And I think that's the fascinating thing about what we do, is that we're looking at something and we can't assume that what we see is actually real. And that's what makes us open and our mediation practice extremely important, because we help people craft something that they can live with, which may be true or it may be an illusion. But we as mediators, we're not after the truth. We're after something that people can live with and do no harm.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Wonderful.
Thank you for having me.